What are the primary user experience management problems you're seeing these days?
So the big problems we see today are actually going outside the people's data centers. So it means third-party content. So think about stuff you're downloading from CDNs, social widgets, ads that you have on your site. That's one big part. The other thing is people want to get more insight. They just don't want to know, okay, it took so long to really download it, but when did the user actually see content on his page? So when did it really appear? And also, what we see is people asking more complex questions. It's not just how fast did the page load for a user, but if a certain user found a problem on the page and is maybe calling up customer support, so what was this user really doing on that page? What were the steps they were doing? How did they run into a problem? And really getting this kind of information. So it definitely goes beyond load times, which was what we actually started with.
Now, strides have been made to gather performance data at the browser level. How do legacy browsers fit into that?
Yeah, so for sure you can't get it into legacy browsers, and even with those, the great work that W3C was doing on getting this data out of the browser. So we have navigation timing here, we have resource timing, user timing, a lot of other specifications. We still have to be aware that the only thing that's right now implemented in the browser is navigation timing. And even not all browsers implementing it, so it's also not the modern browsers, and we'll have to wait for it for some time. The biggest problem that I see currently is Safari. A lot of people are using Safari, whether it's on the Mac or it's on the iPad or the iPhone, but it doesn't provide this information at all. So a lot of efforts have been made to also kind of gather similar data with legacy browsers, because especially if you look into a more enterprising market where people are still using i6 or 7,
right,
you have to get those. So it's really libraries that kind of try to emulate or polyfill that behavior.
Now, using the tools that are available today, what types of analysis are available? I'm thinking of things like geo-hotspotting, that type of stuff.
I think geo-hotspotting is one of the easiest things to do, so figuring out geolocations, how long certain things take to load from geolocations is what's really possible today easily. But you can go even further. Like, we invested a lot of time really solving those hard problems, like figuring out how long it takes to download resources from a CDN, like what you would get with resource timing probably in 1 or 1.5 years from now. You can also get this information right today, or even getting rendering time, so how long does it take to render the page, or a deeper insight into JavaScript framework. Like we work with some of the main JavaScript framework vendors to get specific hooks in there so that I can figure out how long an event took. So how long did it click took until the JavaScript was executed. So there's already a lot possible today. It's just it's not natively supported by the browser and probably will never be, but you can do it.
Now, you mentioned JavaScript. What role do you think JavaScript is going to play in this? Is it the end around? Is it the way to gather that data that's not accessible right now?
Yeah, I think JavaScript instrumentation, which more or less means that you're loading kind of your own JavaScript and hook into different interfaces into the browser, like you hook into the DOM, register event handlers. So it's definitely moving towards the browser and get more information out of the browser than those specifications can provide for a number of reasons. One also being privacy, so you can't open up everything, but you can decide for your own site how much you want to expose or not.
Last question for you. How do you anticipate that performance data will be acquired down the road? Is it going to be a combination of browser and network, or how do you see it playing out?
So I think it will be a combination of a couple of approaches. So browsers definitely play a bigger role than they used to do, simply because there's more data available, and the industry has realized that the real user monitoring data is essential. But we shouldn't forget that there is still a server behind it service behind it, which does all the hard lifting and the hard work behind it. So this data also has to be integrated. Just to give you a very simple example, if you look at web timing, you know when a request starts and when a response starts, but you don't know when the actual request ends and what server time. So things like that are not in there. And also I think synthetic monitoring has still its place in there, because what do you do when there's no user on your site? When you want to figure out, so is it a user problem, or is it some general problem that your site's having? So I'd rather see a convergence of all those technologies we have on the server side, in the browser, and with synthetic agents that we have in there. So I think at the end they will all play together in kind of a combined form to do different things.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks.